Look at this. Literally, half the fucking gangs he mentioned are in this indictment, dude. What the fuck? Feds were listening to the lyrics like on Rap Genius.
Suggests that Thug kind of came up through all these gang blood sort of sets, but that's in the past, and now he's YSL, baby. He goes on to shout out a number of people, referring to them as his slimes, followed by the slat ad-lib. And really, if you ask me, the track Stoner is basically the point where Young Thug began to heavily rep YSL in his music and just in general. This is where the movement began. And it also just so happens that this is the point where Young Thug's career began to take off massively. Along with Stoner, he dropped his other breakout single, Danny Glover. Stoner actually ended up going number 47 on the Billboard chart. So Thug was finally getting a shot at the legitimate music industry. But that doesn't mean that away from the charts, Thug wasn't still rapping on some blood shit. He actually collaborated with that well-known Atlanta blood who we mentioned earlier on in this story, Bloody J, on a collaborative mixtape called Black Portland. Now this was unfortunately taken off of streaming services in 2019, but the mere fact that this project exists just goes to show you how interconnected and clicked up the various blood rappers in Atlanta were at this point in time. But at a certain point, the blood ties in the music industry would go far beyond Atlanta. At a certain point, Young Thug ended up linking with famous industry blood, big-time music mogul, Birdman of Cash Money Records, with Young Thug finding himself featuring prominently on Birdman's Rich Gang collaboration project, including the lead hit single Lifestyle alongside Rich Homie Quan. A track that in my opinion goes down to this very day as probably one of the best party songs that the rap game has ever spawned. So not only does Young Thug land a spot on one of the best party records of the entire era, but he also earns numerous placements on Birdman's Rich Gang The Tour compilation album. This project also featured the bonus track Throw Your Hood Up, where Young Thug, Bloody J, and Nipsey Hussle all rep their gang affiliations heavily, with Thug and Bloody J basically writing a love letter to being a blood. Birdman's all over the track, throwing up his set and replacing C's with B's. But Birdman also says in the intro of the song that they're big bloods but they hang out with a few Crips, hence why Nipsey Hussle is also on the song, dropping lyrics that would only become relevant in court documents years later. So you've got Birdman, Young Thug, and Bloody J and a whole bunch of other blood affiliated rappers running around on tour, living the luxury lifestyle and finally making money off of music. Problem is, along with the blood affiliated musicians are a bunch of blood gang members who are better known in the streets than in the music. In fact, in a Rich Gang behind the scenes vlog, we actually see Young Thug introduce a man to the camera, describing him as one of the biggest bloods in America.
I got one of the biggest bloods in America with me, my nigga. You did. Atlanta, Georgia, nigga.
This man's name is Donovan Thomas, aka Big Nut, and he's a man who would play a major role in the come-up story of YFN Lucci. But unfortunately, his life would be suddenly cut short, sparking a bloody war in the streets that would go on for years to come. So, YFN Lucci's big brother YFNK encouraged him to get into rap when he was a teenager.
My big brother, his name YFNK, he been rapping since I was like 13. Inspired me, made me want to make music. I started rapping, I freestyle.
Okay, now I understand why people say Vlad is a Fed. Bro, I feel like they literally get 90% of this shit from rappers themselves openly fucking admitting on DJ Vlad TV the extent of their gang activity. They're waiting for Vlad and Ross to upload. Vlad is literally a Fed that uses shit in court. I mean, yeah, it's fucking crazy. We're just now understanding this. I type in this chat every time he's on stream.
For my big brother.
But obviously his big brother, who was an aspiring rapper himself, wouldn't really be able to get him into the industry. But fortunately for Lucci, having ties in the streets meant he had a network of people to draw upon who might just be able to give him a head start in the rap game. In fact, one of his closest friend's older brothers was Big Nut, that same man that Young Thug had described on Birdman's yacht as one of the biggest bloods in America. And Lucci would go on to say that Big Nut heard his music and truly believed in him.
Now, you had a close friend named Nut.
Yeah, that was one of my best friend, big brothers. And he would just like believe. He would just believe in me. Like when he just hear my music and shit.
In fact, it was actually Big Nut himself who had introduced YFN Lucci to Fly, who had managed Rich Homie Quan and Trinidad James as part of his record label, Think It's a Game.
Yeah, he introduced me to
Take that
Fly.
shit serious,
Well, I know this person. We gonna try to fuck with this person. But then we were fucking with somebody like, man, I don't think he know too much. I'm gonna introduce you to Fly.
Yeah, Fly had Rich Homie Quan. He also had Trinidad James.
Yeah, so Nut introduced me to them. When he introduced me to them, now they were fucking with the music.
In fact, YFN Lucci would later reveal in a DJ Smalls Eyes interview that it was Nut who introduced Lucci to Fly, saying that Lucci was the hardest rapper out and that he would listen to a strategy if Fly put one together for him.
He introduced me to Fly. He was like, man, Fly know, like, man, shout it. It's hard. Like, ain't nobody harder than him, man. He, you know, he want to do it. He love doing it, so he gonna do it, and he gonna listen. And Fly, you know, Fly, but that was his man, and he believed in him.
Clearly, Nut's word held weight in the streets and in the rap game, and purely off the strength of Nut's recommendation and his first mixtape that was completed but unreleased at this point, Fly decided to give Lucci a chance, releasing his tape Wish Me Well under Think It's a Game Records, with Lucci also getting a care pack courtesy of Fly, a feature from his label mate Rich Homie Quan, for Lucci's first single, Exactly How It Was. And so, all thanks to Big Nut, Lucci finally had an opportunity to break into the rap game fully legit. And from here, Lucci would go on to have big career W's working with Think It's a Game Entertainment. But the saddest fact of all would be that Big Nut, the man that made it all possible for him, wouldn't be around to see it. On January the 11th, 2015, YFN Lucci's close friend and mentor, Big Nut, real name Donovan Thomas, is shot dead at an Atlanta barbershop.
And now to a developing story this morning. The search is on for the person who shot 3 people, including a 14-year-old. 1 man died.
Neighbors in Atlanta's Castleberry Hill neighborhood heard the gunfire around 7:30 Saturday night. She saw 3 young men on the ground. Atlanta police say a teenager and a man in his 20s were both shot in the leg. The third, 26-year-old Donovan Thomas, was critical.
Had a significant injury. We had at least multiple gunshots in the upper torso area. He was rushed to surgery.
Thomas died at the hospital. Homicide detectives.
This is the main reason why Young Thug is in jail right now, because the car that they used to do the shooting, Young Thug was the one who actually rented the vehicle, tying him to the crime.
Looked for bullet holes.
Allegedly.
Brought in a police canine to search for more shell casings. They believe it was a drive-by shooting.
Police believe the 3 2-adult men and a 14-year-old were targeted. Triple shooting outside this barbershop ended the life of 26-year-old Donovan Thomas.
Big Nut was loved and respected by the YFN crew and in the streets of Atlanta at large. And following his death, clips of him with the likes of YFN Lucci circulated on social media, showing just how close these two really were.
Cut, man. Straight up, man. Salute to you, big boy. We fucking with you, man.
Following Nut's death, it's said that there was a massive fallout in the Atlanta music scene. YFN Trey Pound told DJ Smalls Eyes just how shocked he was to hear about Nut's passing, with Lucci also speaking on the loss of Nut in his Karen Civil interview, remembering how Nut had been the first person who put him on in the rap game.
You know, I lost one of my homies who really got me on. You know, long live Nut forever.
Now, as far as I could tell, the police never announced any arrests or suspects in the killing of Nut. And while there's no concrete evidence to suggest that anyone associated with YSL had anything to do with Big Nut's murder, a lot of YouTube videos already exist explaining that theory. Countless comments have popped up on Reddit threads relating to this incident, suggesting YSL had something to do with what happened to Nut. But perhaps most significantly, the Atlanta police would later say, in an indictment targeting YFN members, that local police intelligence suggested that it was widely believed that YSL was somehow responsible for Big Nut's death, going on to state that it was this belief that directly caused the hostility between these two groups. Now, whether or not this is actually true, we'll probably never definitively know. But it is clear that following the death of Nut, a big rift emerged between Atlanta rappers. Rich Homie Quan, who at this point shared management with YFN Lucci, but was also closely involved in Young Thug and Birdman's Rich Gang project.
Okay, so what's the actual link other than fucking cops? Notoriously not very good faith actors in parsing through gang activity, and certainly not Reddit, which is predominantly occupied by white people who would, who certainly physically at least have proximity, like really no proximity to the situation whatsoever.
would take a step back from things, with Rich Homie Quan's relationship with Thug famously declining, and Quan just generally taking a step out of the limelight. It would also appear that the former collaborative relationship between Bloody J and Young Thug would never be the same again too, as Bloody J would continue to collaborate with YFN Lucci, but not Thug. At a certain point, the city of Atlanta basically split into two halves, and according to the police, this is when the beef truly heated up, with the cops reporting